Part 2. The Demon King's Path to Unification. This was the greatest challenge of Nobunaga's life since he took power. Facing an army 10 times his size, any normal general would choose to hole up in their castle, hoping to buy time and wait for a miracle. But Nobunaga was no normal general. He knew that defending the castle was just waiting to die. With Yoshimoto's forces, besieging and taking a castle was only a matter of time. He had to do something crazy, something no one would expect. The next morning, as the Imagawa army was advancing thunderously, Nobunaga remained calm. He even performed a dance and sang a song about the brevity of life. His retainers looked at him and could only shake their heads, thinking their lord had truly gone mad. After the performance, Nobunaga suddenly ordered his troops to assemble and march out. With just a small group of cavalry, he rode out of the castle. His destination was not the main battlefield, but a small shrine where he prayed and gathered more troops. His force, even after gathering everyone he could, was only about 2,000 to 3,000 men. Meanwhile, the Imagawa army was enjoying an easy victory. They had captured a few Oda border forts and were camped in a narrow gorge called Tenka Hazama, near Okehazama. Yoshimoto, the commander-in-chief, was in the main camp, savoring the taste of victory. He and his generals were celebrating, drinking sake and admiring the heads of the enemies they had just taken. They were completely convinced that Nobunaga was cowering in his castle, too afraid to show his face. Arrogance had made them careless. Nobunaga, after receiving accurate intelligence about Yoshimoto's location, decided to bet everything on a single strike. He would attack Yoshimoto's headquarters directly. It was a suicidal plan, a mad act, but in that madness lay a glimmer of hope. He led his 3,000 men on a roundabout route, moving through dense forest to avoid being spotted. And then, the heavens seemed to favor Nobunaga's plan. A sudden thunderstorm broke out. The rain poured down in sheets, and thunder and lightning filled the sky. This storm completely concealed the movement of the Oda army. The sound of the rain drowned out their footsteps, and the thick curtain of water limited visibility. The Imagawa troops in the camp were busy seeking shelter from the rain, with no idea that death was approaching. When the rain suddenly stopped and the sun emerged, the Oda army was right in front of Yoshimoto's camp. Nobunaga didn't waste a second. He roared, "Attack!" The 3,000 Oda soldiers, with the spirit of having nothing left to lose, charged into the camp like hungry tigers. The Imagawa army was taken completely by surprise. They were still drunk, their clothes were soaked, and their weapons were scattered. They had no time to react. Chaos ensued. The Imagawa soldiers, used to overwhelming enemies with superior numbers, now panicked and fled before the ferocious assault of a much smaller army. Yoshimoto, sitting in his tent, heard the screams and thought it was just a brawl among drunken soldiers. It was only when an Oda samurai charged straight into his tent that he realized what was happening. The noble lord hastily drew his sword to defend himself, but it was too late. In the chaotic melee, Imagawa Yoshimoto was killed. When the news of the commander-in-chief's death spread, the entire 25,000-strong Imagawa army disintegrated. They threw down their weapons and banners and fled in disarray. A massive army had been defeated by a single surprise attack from a much smaller force. The victory at Okehazama is one of the greatest upsets in Japanese military history. It made the name of Oda Nobunaga, the Fool of Owari, famous throughout the country. No one dared to look down on him anymore. This was the first major stepping stone, the cornerstone of his extraordinary career. The death of Imagawa Yoshimoto created a huge power vacuum. The Imagawa clan, having lost its brilliant leader, quickly weakened. They were like a shark that suddenly had all its teeth pulled, becoming a tasty meal for the hungry neighbors around them. And among those who saw an opportunity, there was one who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. That was Matsudaira Takechiyo, the obedient vassal of the Imagawa. When the news of the Battle of Okehazama reached him, Takechiyo was commanding a small unit on a logistical mission. Hearing that his protector and controller was dead, his first reaction was probably shock, followed by an indescribable joy. The chain that had bound him for so many years had finally broken. Takechiyo stood at a crossroads. Either remain loyal to the collapsing Imagawa clan, or find a new path for himself. He, who had learned the lesson of pragmatism the hard way, did not hesitate for long. Whichever way the wind blows, he decided it was time to determine his own destiny. He quickly withdrew his troops back to the Matsudaira domain and declared independence from the Imagawa. And then, he did something no one expected. He sought to ally with his clan's old enemy, the man who had once held him captive, and who had just killed his former master. He went to Oda Nobunaga. It was an extremely intelligent decision. Instead of confronting the rising power of Nobunaga, Takechiyo chose to become an ally. He met with Nobunaga, and the two men, one the rule-breaking fool, the other the master of patience, forged one of the most durable and important alliances in Japanese history, the Kiyosu Alliance. According to the agreement, the Matsudaira clan would become a defensive shield for Nobunaga in the east, allowing him to deal with enemies to the north and west with peace of mind. In return, Nobunaga would not invade Matsudaira territory and would provide support when needed. To mark his new beginning, Takechiyo did something symbolic. He changed his name. The name Takechiyo, associated with his childhood as a hostage, was replaced by a new, more powerful name that reflected his greater ambitions. He began calling himself Tokugawa Ieyasu. The name, Tokugawa, was chosen to assert his descent from the Minamoto clan, a glorious shogun clan of the past, thereby indirectly claiming his own right to rule the realm. A small act, but one that showed the far-sighted vision of this man. And so, two of our three main characters had found each other. Nobunaga, the raging fire, and Ieyasu, the still water. Together, they would turn the entire era upside down. With his eastern flank secured, thanks to the Tokugawa shield, Nobunaga began to systematically implement his ambition of unifying the realm. His next target was the Saito clan to the north, in Mino province. This was also the clan of his wife, Nohime. His father-in-law, Saito Dosan, a remarkable figure, had been overthrown and killed by his own son. Nobunaga used the pretext of avenging his father-in-law to wage war. After many years of fighting, he finally destroyed the Saito clan and conquered the rich province of Mino. He moved his base here and gave it a new, ambitious name, Gifu. The name was inspired by a place in Chinese history where a new dynasty began. Nobunaga also began to use a seal inscribed with 4 characters, Tenka Fubu, meaning unify the realm by military force. His ambition was now openly declared. He officially became one of the leading warlords of Japan. During this time, a new element appeared and completely changed the face of warfare: the matchlock musket. Portuguese traders had come to Japan to trade and spread Christianity, and they brought this powerful weapon with them. Many traditional samurai lords viewed firearms as the weapon of the weak, devoid of honor. But Nobunaga, with his practical mind, immediately recognized its potential. He didn't care about empty honor. He only cared about effectiveness. He established professional matchlock units, investing heavily in their production and training. This weapon would become the trump card that helped him defeat all his future enemies. With his domain expanded and an army equipped with modern technology, Nobunaga began to eye the prize that Imagawa Yoshimoto had died trying to reach: the capital city of Kyoto. But Nobunaga was smarter than Yoshimoto. He knew that if he just marched his army to Kyoto, he would be seen as an invader, and other clans would unite against him. He needed a pretext, a legitimate reason, an invitation. And, once again, fate smiled upon him. In 1568, the reigning shogun was assassinated. His younger brother, Ashikaga Yoshiaki, had to flee the capital to save his life. Yoshiaki, wishing to become the next shogun, traveled everywhere seeking a lord powerful enough to help him return to Kyoto. After being rejected by many, he finally came to Oda Nobunaga. This was the very pretext Nobunaga had been waiting for. Helping the legitimate shogun. What could be a more righteous cause? He immediately agreed. Nobunaga led a powerful army and marched into Kyoto with full legitimacy. He quickly suppressed the opposing forces and installed Yoshiaki as the new shogun. Nobunaga had succeeded where Yoshimoto had failed. He now controlled the capital. But Nobunaga didn't stop there. He continued his military campaigns, striking south to expand his territory. The new shogun, Yoshiaki, quickly realized a harsh truth. He was merely a puppet in Nobunaga's hands. Nobunaga increasingly overstepped his authority, issuing laws that restricted the shogun's power and turning him into a figurehead in the truest sense. Unwilling to accept this, Shogun Yoshiaki began to act in secret. He sent letters to other powerful lords, Nobunaga's enemies, calling on them to form a coalition to encircle and destroy the traitor Oda. A vast anti-Nobunaga network was formed, including formidable names like the Asakura clan, the Azai clan, the clan of Nobunaga's brother-in-law, and even the Tiger of Kai, Takeda Shingen. Nobunaga was suddenly attacked from multiple sides. The pincer attack from the Asakura and Azai dealt him his first defeats and nearly cost him his life. Not only warlords but also religious forces joined the fight. The armed warrior monks of the great temples, especially Enryakuji on Mount Hiei, became one of Nobunaga's toughest opponents. They had their own armies, their own territories, and were ready to fight anyone who threatened their interests. It took Nobunaga 10 years and extremely brutal measures, including burning the 800-year-old temple to the ground and killing everyone inside, from monks to women and children, to finally subdue them. Furious at Shogun Yoshiaki's opposition, Nobunaga decided he no longer needed this puppet. He marched his army back to Kyoto, deposed the shogun, and exiled him from the capital. The Ashikaga shogunate, which had existed for over 200 years, officially came to an end. Nobunaga now became the true ruler of central Japan, without needing any title to mask it. While Nobunaga was busy quelling rebellions around Kyoto, a real threat emerged in the east. Takeda Shingen, the Tiger of Kai, one of the greatest military strategists of the age, finally decided to enter the fray. With the goal of saving the shogun and marching on Kyoto, Shingen led his invincible Furin Kazan cavalry westward. Nobunaga's ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu, was the first to face the tiger's wrath. At the Battle of Mikatagahara, Ieyasu, despite fighting bravely, was crushed by Shingen's army. It was one of the most devastating defeats of Ieyasu's life. He had to flee for his life, and according to legend, was so scared that he soiled himself. But even in his panic, Ieyasu kept a cool head. He ordered a portrait of himself to be painted right after the defeat, with a miserable expression, to remind himself of that bitter lesson. Takeda Shingen was a genius. With his talent, he was fully capable of destroying both Tokugawa and Nobunaga and becoming the master of Japan. The entire Oda Tokugawa Alliance was on the brink of collapse. And then, once again, luck smiled on Nobunaga. While on the march, Takeda Shingen suddenly fell ill and died. His death remains a mystery. It could have been an illness, or perhaps a wound from a sniper's bullet. The mighty tiger had fallen. The Takeda army, having lost its soul, was forced to retreat. Nobunaga and Ieyasu had narrowly escaped. Shingen's son, Takeda Katsuyori, took power. Katsuyori was also a brave warrior, but he lacked his father's wisdom and vision. He decided to continue the westward expansion, wanting to prove himself even better than his father. Katsuyori led 15,000 troops, mostly cavalry, into Tokugawa's territory and besieged Nagashino Castle. Ieyasu hastily called for Nobunaga's help. This time, Nobunaga personally brought a large force to reinforce him. The combined Oda Tokugawa army of about 38,000 men confronted the Takeda army at Nagashino. This was where Nobunaga deployed an incredibly devastating firearm tactic, one that would change history. Katsuyori, confident in his Takeda cavalry, which was reputed to be the strongest in Japan, ordered them to charge directly at the Allied formation. He didn't know he was charging straight into a death trap. Nobunaga had set up wooden palisades to slow the cavalry's advance. Behind these fences, he positioned 3,000 matchlock gunners. But instead of having them fire one volley and then reload, a time-consuming process, he divided them into 3 ranks. When the first rank fired, they would step back to reload, and the second rank would step forward to fire. In this way, they created an almost continuous rain of bullets. When the mighty Takeda cavalry charged, they were met with a wall of fire. Bullets rained down, piercing even thick armor. Horses and riders fell like stalks of wheat. The once invincible cavalry was now completely helpless against the overwhelming firepower of the matchlocks. The Takeda army lost 7 out of every 10 men. Many of their most talented generals perished in this battle. Katsuyori suffered a painful defeat and had to retreat with his remaining forces. The Battle of Nagashino confirmed the obsolescence of traditional cavalry in the face of firearm firepower. It also marked the irreversible decline of the Takeda clan. After eliminating the threat from the Takeda, Nobunaga faced another formidable opponent. Uesugi Kenshin, the god of war, or the dragon of Echigo. Kenshin was Takeda Shingen's arch-rival, an equally talented general and a deeply devout man. In 1577, Nobunaga led an army of 50,000 to attack Uesugi. Despite his overwhelming numerical superiority, Nobunaga was completely stymied by Kenshin's fierce resistance. At the Battle of Tedorigawa, the Oda army was even defeated by Kenshin. Kenshin began to shift from defense to offense. He assembled a large army, preparing to march straight into Nobunaga's territory. All of Japan held its breath once again. Could the god of war stop the advance of the Demon King Nobunaga? And then, the unexpected happened again. Just as he was at the peak of his planning, Uesugi Kenshin suddenly died of a cerebral hemorrhage. The deaths of Takeda Shingen and Uesugi Kenshin, Nobunaga's 2 greatest rivals, not on the battlefield but due to health reasons, is truly one of history's ironies. It seemed that heaven's mandate was truly on Nobunaga's side. Now, no one could threaten his ambition to unify Japan. Nobunaga continued his campaigns of territorial expansion. By 1582, most of central Japan, the most fertile and important region, was under his control. The path to unifying the entire country seemed wide open. To be continued.